Lekute Sichos Chelek Tes Zayin, the Sicha of Shemos Chavdala Teves. It's page 33 in the Sefer. Lila Nishbis Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Nasha Kaltman. Today we are going to learn the idea of a yard site as it connects to the Maisa of Terasei Vavidasei, to the life story, the life accomplishments of a tzaddik, and how that connects with the concept of Galus as we learn about it in Parshas Shemos. Der Tzemach Tzedek schreibt wegen der Histalkus von Alten Rebbe. Tzemach Tzedek writes with regards to the Histalkus, the passing of the Alter Rebbe. Die Nochen beschreiben bekitzer, die Tiltulim was der Alter Rebbe hat durchgemacht, after writing briefly the various tribulations that the Alter Rebbe experienced and leifendig von die Tzarfatim, running away from the French. This is taking place in the year 1812. At that time, Russia was at war with Napoleon, and as the story is well known, the Alter Rebbe sided with the Tsarist regime over the French army. And when the French army entered into Russia, one of the things on their agenda was to take revenge from the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe, in the summer of Tov Kuf Ayin Beis of 1812, the Alter Rebbe felt the need to escape from his hometown of Liadi together with his family, and was on the run for a few months until, and in the letter, there's a letter from the Mittel Rebbe which describes this more at length, the various different stops that they made and how they were constantly running and escaping until in middle of Chodesh Kislev, they came to a village called Piena. And ultimately, this is where the Alter Rebbe was nostalgic, as we will see, bis zu seinen Ankommen in the Dorf Piena, Erev Shabbos Vayishlach Tov Kuf Ayin Gimel. It was Erev Shabbos Parshas Vayishlach when he arrived, and the Alter Rebbe and his entourage arrived in the village of Piena. And the Tzemach Tzedek writes, as b'Mitzoi Shabbos Kodesh Tishmos, on the Mitzoi Shabbos of Parshas Shemos, which Shemos was Chav Gimel, the 23rd of Teves, and now it's already after Shabbos, Oir L'Chav Dalet Teves, the eve of the 24th of Teves, Kachatzoi Shah Yud Aleph, around 10:30, Nishba Aron HaKodesh, Me'er Yisrael Mashiach Hashem, the holy Aron, the luminary of the Yidden, the anointed of Hashem, was taken from us, and the Alter Rebbe was nostalgic. Says Yaduaz ala Moyadei Hashana. It is known that all of the Moyadim, all of the festivals of the year, the same thing applies to the days of tzaddikim, including the birthdays and the days of passing of tzaddikim, are connected to the parsha that is being read at that time. Von dem Teire Wort, von dem Bala Ilula, von dem Alten Rebbe, as man darf leben mit der Zeit, mit der Parshas Shavua. It's also understood from the fact that the Alter Rebbe taught that we have to live with the times, and it was explained that it means to live with the Parsha of the week. So something that takes place in a specific Parsha is clearly connected to that, the event is connected to the Parsha. Ubi in Yonenu, and to apply this to our story, Hagamas die Histalkus von Alten Rebbe is given earlich of Dalet Teves, was is ausgefallen in Yom Aleph von Parshas Vayera. Even though the Histalkus of the Alter Rebbe was on Mitzvah Shabbos, which is the basically already Sunday, so it coincided with the Sunday of Vayera. Der Fun aber, was der Tzemach Tzedek hat sich nicht begnügend mit Anzeichen und Bläus dem Zman von earlich of Dalet Teves. However, from the fact that the Tzemach Tzedek in his letter did not suffice to indicate the time that it was the eve of Chav Dalet Teves, unafilu nit mit Moshe sein dem Tag von Vach, nor did he suffice by just saying it was Mitzvah Shabbos. Mitzvah Shabbos Kodesh. Nor git eich zu, as es gwen Mitzvah Shabbos Kodesh to Shemos. However, it's Tzemach Tzedek. He adds that this Mitzvah Shabbos was the Mitzvah Shabbos of Parshas Shemos. Und nochmal is dazu noch Meisif. As Shabbos Kodesh Shemos is gwen auf Gimel Teves, and it's Tzemach Tzedek also adds the detail that Shabbos Shemos was Chav Gimel Teves, the 23rd of Teves. In other words, emphasizing the day preceding the night of the passing, instead of focusing on the day that follows the day of passing, which is the date, the actual date of the Histalkus. Is therefore verstandig as the Histalkus hat a shayches euch u beikert zu Parshas Shemos. From this it can be understood that the Histalkus is connected primarily to Shemos, especially since we do not see any mention of Va'era. There's a very interesting Ha'ara 8, where the Rebbe makes the point of the mention of Mitzvah Shabbos Kodesh and the fact that the Histalkus was on a Mitzvah Shabbos, that L'cha'era, this seems to make the opposite point. The Gemara in Ksubah says that Meis Be'erev Shabbos Simin Yafeloi, that if someone passes away on Erev Shabbos, it's a good sign. And because Sheikonis L'menucha Miyad, because he enters into a peaceful state, which is Shabbos, immediately. And Mitzvah Shabbos, it says Simin Raloi, it's the opposite of good. So the Rebbe points out that when it comes to the Nesiya Yisrael, to the Tzaddikim, to the Rabbeim, the whole point of the Tzaddik, the time of the Tzaddik is an Eis Ratzon. Hamizgala Umeir B'chinas Gilim and Maila Lamata is a time of the Eibishter's, the revelation of the Eibishter's will. And therefore Mitzvah Shabbos, which begins the Avodah of the new week, and the Yidden, the rest of the people who the Tzaddik cares for more than anything else, are beginning their week. Therefore, the Nesi Yisrael, for them, they don't worry about themselves. They're not concerned for themselves. They're concerned for the Yidden. So Mitzvah Shabbos, which is the time that the Neshama Yisera leaves, and an extra boost is needed, that is when their Histalkus is, so that way it could bring down the revelation of the Ratzon of the Eibishter to the Yidden as they begin their new work week. So we see a connection b'chlal between the Histalkus of a Tzaddik, of a Rebbe, and Mitzvah Shabbos, that though for themselves it may not be the loftiest time, but for the people that they're leaving behind, their flock, their Chasidim, the best thing for them is the Histalkus on Mitzvah Shabbos. Befrat is der Genoyers man Histalkus gewen wie der Tzemach Tzedek schreibt Chatzos Shah Yud Aleph, especially since, as the Tzemach Tzedek writes, the exact time was approximately 10:30. Was bin a kama dinim v'inyanim haben doch yadua die shoys from Mitzvah Shabbos Kodesh far Chatzos Halayla ashaychos to Shabbos, and as we know that with regards to various different aspects of halacha, the hours of Mitzvah Shabbos prior to Chatzos are connected to Shabbos. One example referenced in the Ara 13 is brought in the Sefer Shari Tshuva to the Shulchan Aruch, brought in the name of the Arizal, that a person should not say vidui on Mitzvah Shabbos. This could apply, for example, to Tachnun in Kriyashma, and other types of vidui should not be done before Chatzos of Mitzvah Shabbos, because it's still connected. That time is still connected to Shabbos. He says, "Bazunder bavais." This is an additional display of their shaychus from the Histalkus to Parsha Shmos Davke, of the connection between the Histalkus of the Alter Rebbe and the Parsha of Shmos specifically. So the first seif of the Sicha emphasizes to us the connection between the Alter Rebbe's Histalkus and Parsha Shmos, although really it was already Parshas Va'era. Seif Beis, the Rebbe is going to explain that connection in a nutshell. The Teichel of Parshas Shemos is Galus v'Shibud Mitzrayim. The theme of Parshas Shemos is the Galus, the exile, and the slavery in Mitzrayim. In the Parshas was Far Parshas Shemos Vayigash and Vayichi Retzich wegen des man von Far Shibud Mitzrayim. The Parshas is prior to Shemos Vayigash and Vayichi speak about the time before the enslavement. Hagam Sisheng when the Yidei Mitzrayim, even though they already came down to Mitzrayim, but the slavery didn't begin. Ukmai Marazal Kosman Shoya Echad Mem Kayam Chulu Leishibdu Amitzrayim B'Yisrael. As Chazal tell us that as long as one of the sons of Yaakov were still alive, the Mitzrayim did not enslave the Jewish people. Leidach. Conversely, in the parashas was nach Shemos, parashas ve'ero and boy, in the parashas following Shemos, hagamas euch in zei werd gedet wegen die tkufas hashibut von die Yidden in Mitzrayim, even though they too discuss the era of the slavery of the Yidden, von deswegen sehen sich schon on in parashas ve'ero die Zeichens auf dem Anim von der Geula. Nevertheless, already in ve'ero you see indications that the Geula is about to begin. Number one, you see the Oasis and Mevisim was the Eibishter at Bavizin. You see some of the signs that the Eibishter, Moshe Rabbeinu shows the signs to the Yidden. Und die Makis was gebracht auf die Mitzrayim, as well as the Makis. Euch the Shibud Guf is dann geworden gringer. Additionally, the slavery became somewhat easier in that a year. Und noch mehr Chazal sagen, as Rosh Hashanah, Batla, Avedim, Yavesinu, Mitzrayim, and even more than that, Chazal teach that already on Rosh Hashanah, of the year of the Exodus, the Avodah, the slavery stopped. So we see that already in Va'era, life is getting a little bit easier for the Yidden. When Allah has come in Parshas Boy, was very showing that still they're going to go, especially in Parshas Boy, where the Geula, the redemption is taught. Da kegen in Parshas Shemos, whereas in the Parsha of Shemos, wo der Teichen von der ganze Sedre besteht von Pratim in dem Geudel v'Kushi Hashibud, which the entire Sedre consists of details of the severity and the intensity of the slavery. Bisum der Tzeilen in Sof von der Sedre, so much so that in the end of the Sedre, it is told to us as Pari had Geize given Leisei Sifun Losses, Pari decreed to not give the materials necessary to the Yidden. Tichba da Aveda ala Nashim, to make the work even more difficult. Bis afilu Moshe Rabbeinu hat geteinet zum Eibishten me'oz basi el parei heir ala amazeh. And Moshe complains to Hashem that from when I came to Paroi in your name, it just became worse for the Yidden. So the uniqueness of Parsha Shemos is the hardship of the slavery in Mitzrayim. Und damit können wir wahr sein mit der Chevsche, die Scheiches und der Istalkus und alten Reben zu Parsha Shemos, and with this we can possibly explain the connection between the Istalkus of the Alter Rebbe in Parsha Shemos. Wie der Mann früher is the Istalkus von alten Rebbe gewesen, beessen gefinden sich in Galus. As we mentioned earlier, the Istalkus of the Alter Rebbe was when he was in his own Galus. Ukloshna tzemach tzedek, to quote the tzemach tzedek, kishe borchu mitzarfatim, they were escaping from the French. V'hoya metultol, and he was unsettled. He was constantly on the run. Ad bi'asan lePiena, until they arrived to the village Piena. Und wie die alle Prati atiltul va Yisurim werden beschrieben in a brief von Mitteln Reben, and the details of the escaping and the running and the constantly not being able to settle in one place are described at length in a letter from the Mitteln Rebbe to Reb Moshe Meislish. One of the places this letter is printed is in Sefer HaToldos of the Alter Rebbe, and we see how the Alter Rebbe was in his own personal galus. So the idea of the Alter Rebbe being in galus connects to Parsha Shemos when the Yidden were in galus and the hardship, the hard times of galus. In Sif Gimel, the Rebbe is going to go a step further and say that really there isn't just a connection between the Alter Rebbe's Histalkus and galus, but since the day of Histalkus represents the entire accomplishments of the tzaddik, there is a connection between the avodah of the Alter Rebbe and the idea of galus. So you do what the Baal Elul schreibt in von Elul Histalkus. It's known the Alter Rebbe writes with regards to the day of a passing of a tzaddik. As demos an Elul Lamaylo Kol Ma'asav Terasiv Avedosei Hashav B'Kol Yimei Chayav, that on that day everything, his deeds, his learning, and his accomplishments are elevated on that day. And in the time of his passing, all of this shines down from above onto this world. So there's a connection on the day of Histalkos that it is the culmination of everything that he accomplished during his lifetime and affects the world in a whole new way. And since every event is ordained by Hashem, there is certainly something that occurs with a tzaddik and a rebbe. So it's understood that the fact that the Alter Rebbe's passing took place when he was in a galus, in an exile, after kesher und pnimis dikeshayches zwischen Maisa v'teirasi v'avidasi von Bala Ilula. This shows on a deeper connection between everything that he accomplished, which is elevated and is revealed and shines down on during the time of the Histalkus, with the unique quality of the Aveda of Galus, which is what caused that his Histalkus should be in Galus. In other words, the fact that his Histalkus was in Galus shows us that there's a connection between everything that he accomplished and the idea of Galus. The Yeshleimer, the Rebbe now adds something else to that. As das ist der Tam, was der letzte Chagagulu von Yutes Kislev, was der Alte Rebbe hat gepravet b'chaim chayusi b'almodein. This would explain why the final Yutes Kislev that the Alter Rebbe celebrated in this world is given in dem Golus Ort von der Histalkus, was in the same place of Golus as where the Histalkus took place. But with the Manfrier Divrei HaSamach Tzedek is biyosam lepiena, given Erev Shabbos vayishlach. But das is given fire Yutes Kislev, as the Samach Tzedek writes in the letter that they arrived to the village Piena on Erev Shabbos of Parshas Vayishlach, which was right before Yutes Kislev. In order 24, the Rebbe mentions that in the Rishimus of the Frierdiker Rebbe, it mentions that he arrived there on Ches Teves, and the Rebbe says Ulay Utos Hamaitik. This might have been a mistake, a printing mistake, because the Tzemach Tzedek writes that it was Erev Shabbos Vayishlach, but so from this we see that the Histalkus, that Yutes Kislev of that year, the Alter Rebbe was already in Piena, which is where a few weeks later it was Nistalik. Varum. The bald Yutes Kislev, the Rashon Lachsidis is the Nikuda Hatichena from Maisa v'Tirasi v'Avidasi from Bala Ilula. Yutes Kislev is the focal point, is the center focal point of everything the Alter Rebbe accomplished. But das hat verbunden mit Meiles Aveda is Managolus Canal, and according to what we said just a moment ago, that everything that the Alter Rebbe accomplished is connected with Galus. Their fire is Eichsein, let's the Yutes Kislev, therefore the Alter Rebbe's final Yutes Kislev. But das made Mimela der Hechster Ilu from the Yom Naila bet Kufas Chayev Ba'almadein, which if it's the final Yutes Kislev, then it is the climax, it is the highest of all the Yutes Kislevs. Die Badas B'chol Shana V'Shana, Yere du Meir Erchadosh U'Mechudosh Lehoya Meir Adayim Ayelum, because as Alter Rebbe himself says, that every year, every Rosh Hashanah, a new light comes down to the world that has never been here before. And therefore, every year, we go higher and higher. And therefore, every Yutes Kislev was a higher and higher level. And therefore, the last and final Yutes Kislev would have been the highest, the climax of everything that the Alter Rebbe accomplished in his entire life. Where was it? Given in Golus. Und noch mehr, in demselben Golus-Ort, not only was the Alter Rebbe already on the run, but he was in the same exact location where ultimately the Histalkus took place. Weil demult stehen alle seine Meise v'tirasi v'avdasi v'tachas Shemos canal is because there in Piena, the day of the Histalkus is where everything that the Alter Rebbe accomplished was in a state of perfection, and therefore Yutes Kislev, which represents the climax of everything the Alter Rebbe accomplished, also had to take place in that same place of Galus. So not only is there a connection between the Alter Rebbe's Histalkus and Galus, but there's clearly a connection between Ma'asav, Teirasi, V'Avidasi, everything the Alter Rebbe taught and accomplished with the idea of Galus. And this is what we're going to try to explain now in Siv Daled, Hey, and on. First in Siv Daled, we're going to explain the connection between the idea of the name Shemos and the Galus that is represented in the Parsha. Wir werden es verstehen, lachen, wir werden wahr sein, dem Inyan Anal. So we'll understand this by first explaining this idea as the Teichen from Parsha Shemos is Golos Hashibud Mitzrayim, that the theme of Parsha Shemos is the slavery and the exile in Mitzrayim, the hardship of it. The Rebbe discussed many times that the name of the Seder contains the content, the theme of the Seder. It's not verstandig in unser Inyan, and this raises a question. Das, was der Wort Shemos enthalten sich, is lechera hepech von dem Inyan von Galus Mitzrayim. Seemingly, the word Shemos contains a meaning that is actually contrary to the idea of Galus. Vile, and for the following three reasons. Aleph Chazal zagi v'demon frier as kosman shaya echad mehem kayom me'oisnes yordu l'Mitzrayim le'shivdu ha'Mitzrayim b'Yisrael. As long as any of the 70 people that came down to Mitzrayim were still alive, the shibud, the slavery, didn't begin. So Eila Shmois Kumtachois, as that Inyan for Shmois b'nei Yisrael aboy Mitzrayim, the names of the people that came down to Mitzrayim, had garnid der losen dem shibud from Mitzrayim, we're not allowing the shibud to begin. If we're talking about the people that came down to Mitzrayim, Shmois b'nei Yisrael, haboyim Mitzrayim, they're the ones that held off the shibud for quite some time. So Shmois actually represents the pre-shibud, the not shibud. Beis, euch die besondere Hadgashe von dem Wort Shmois Gufa. Das was der Eibishter hat, sie hat noch einmal gezählt bis Shmois. And also if you were to focus on the word Shmois, that it means the names, that the Eibishter counted the Yidden by name, is doch gewen wie Rashi sagt, leidiach ibas, and Rashi says this was to let us know how precious they were to the Eibishter. Was ist der Eibich von Galus V'keshi Yeshivut von the Yidden? Which is contrary to the idea of enslaving Yidden. The preciousness, the love that Hashem has for the Yidden is the opposite of the slavery that the Yidden experienced, which is going to be discussed in the Parsha. So again, Shmois, the idea of names, is the opposite of Shibud. Gimel. The Shmois einen Gork Mamer Chazal al Shem Gulas Yisrael Niskuru Kan. The names, the Medrash brings that the names of the Yidden, Reuven, Shimon, etc., are mentioned here with a reference to the Geula. Reuven is Ra Hashem Ba'ani. Roi Roisi es Oni Ami. I saw the pain of my people. Shimon, Vayishma, Lekimis, Nakasam, the Eibishter heard their cries. And the Medrash continues, each of the names of the 12 Shvatim represents another element or another pasuk referring to the Geula. So the names here, says the Medrash, are connected to the Geula. So again, how are you saying that Shmois represents the Galus V'Shibud if Shmois represents the Geula? A, these are the people that held off the Galus. B, the names, the counting represents the love of Hashem. And C, these very names are all references to the Geula. So we're going to explain this as follows. What is the advantage of Galus? It consists of the following fact. Is specifically in the times of Galus that the power of Mesiras Nefesh, of the self-sacrifice of a Yid becomes revealed. Where does the koyach from Mesiras Nefesh come from? From the essence, from the core of the neshama. From the koyach von Yechidus benefesh etzem neshama direkt sich is beiker dort und in der matze wo es fällt der banem und hergish nelekus mitzad die koyches agluyim for the neshama. The etzem neshama, the core of the soul, comes out to the fore, specifically in a situation where the grasp and the feeling of the neshama, which would come from the more external faculties, such as seichel and midas, is not functioning. And therefore, the bond, the connection with godliness is not so possible because the regular external faculties, seichel and midas, are asleep, are not functioning. And then the essence of the Yid, the core of the Yid, comes out into the open and connects the Yid with the Eibishter. To use a very not grubbe, but a very gashmistic emotional, sometimes you're trying to accomplish something on the phone, and the representative on the other line is not bringing any success. So you say, "Can I speak to the supervisor?" If you go a level higher, there's more power there than the limited power or limited authority of the lowly representative, and so hopefully the supervisor can accomplish something. So when, generally speaking, the way a person interacts, even with ruchnius, is with seichel amidus. You understand a lakus, you feel a lakus, and this gives you a connection with Hashem. But if the seichel amidus aren't working, then you go to a higher level, a level that's not limited to what the seichel amidus are limited to, and that is the level of yechidus shebenefesh, which has the power to connect even when the regular connection is concealed. Underfar in dem is bound von der Beis Hamikdash is kayom when a lukus is meir begili, when the Beis Hamikdash was standing and a lukus was revealed. Is echt the ikar aveda von the Yidden gewen mit keiches hagluyim. Then the primary aveda of a Yid was with the keiches hagluyim, the external faculties. See, but the hertel lukusi is barach and the keiches pnimim hagluyim v'seichel umidus, the internalized godliness through their keiches of seichel and midus. Through intellect and through emotion. When we bow us an aveda shal pitam v'das v'hergish, and since this aveda was coming from a place of understanding and feelings, is the dividend nigish in the aveda derkech v'n yechida. Therefore, the power of the essence of the soul is not necessarily necessary. Dafkins vanagolos when der elikis belam v'hester. But then, when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed and the Yidden went into galus, at that time the divine light is concealed. We can't see the signs of godliness, and we don't understand what is happening. And because the revelation is not there, therefore there is a concealment and even challenges on the fulfillment of Teiro mitzvahs. Dafke dan, wenn und weil se fällt die Wirkung von der Gilui die Kekeches an Neshama, then, and specifically then, because we're lacking the impact of the external revealed faculties of the neshama, then this awakens, this triggers the power of Yechidus Benefesh zu starken sich auf die Schwierigkeiten und Nisyenis auf Kiyum HaTorah Mitzvahs mitzad dem Etzem HaYiskashus von Iden zum Ebersten, to incorporate the more core connection of a Yid with the Eibishter, and to utilize that to overcome the hardships and the challenges on Torah mitzvahs. When galus, when there's the concealment of galus, what you need is something deeper than the keiches hagluyim, than the person's regular modus operandi of connecting to Hashem through understanding and through feeling. That may not work because of the time of galus, and therefore you dig deeper, and because it's galus, this allows for the etzem haneshama to become revealed. Und das ist gewend der Inyan von Galus Mitzrayim und Galus Bechal, and this is the idea of Galus. Was davke durch dem ist gekommen zum Ausdruck die Asmis die Keiskashos von Iden zum Eibishten. It is because it was Galus that the core connection of a Yid to the Eibishter was able to be expressed. And this wasn't just for the sake of expressing that, of bringing out that a connection. This actually served as a preparation to Matan Torah. Was echt der Tachlis Matan Torah is mamshach seine Lukusten dvarim gashmiyim welche seine Tachtenim. Also the purpose of Matan Torah is to draw down godliness into the lowly dwellers of this world, the lowly levels of this world. Und durch Teiro Mitzvahs sollen eich sehen werden adir leisbarach through Teiro Mitzvahs, even the material, physical objects of this world should become a dwelling place for Hashem. Weil dafke in dem drückt sich aus der Etzem von Teiro, because specifically through Dira B'Tachtenim is where you're able to bring out the essence of Teiro. So bringing out the essence of the Yid in Galus is a preparation to bringing out the essence of Torah, which is what allows the creation or the making of a Dira B'Tachtenim. So this is a very, very fundamental yesod. It's obviously not the first time we've spoken about this, but nevertheless, this is a very fundamental yesod, that the idea of galus is in order to bring out the deepest, most koyach of the yid, to be able to highlight the connection of the etzem haneshama, of the yechidish benefesh with the Eibishter, with a lakus. So it's because of the darkness that we are able to highlight. This is sort of a paradox, where it's because of the darkness that we're able to highlight this higher, deeper hiskashrus connection of the neshama with the Eibishter. In Sivav, we're going to talk about the idea of names, and we're going to see a very similar concept. There even the gezogter biur in the Meile von Avodah in Zman HaGolus, this above mentioned explanation in the advantage of the Avodah of Golus, that despite the fact that the divine light is not shining in a revealed way, nevertheless, specifically then, there is a revelation of the etzem, the core of the neshama, is merumas neminion von Shemos, is alluded to in the idea of names. In the Shaykhs von Anomen to mention, was Trakter Nomen, in the relation between the person who carries the name and the name, we find two extremes. On the one hand, we find that the person does not need his own name for himself. The name is a means in order for the other person to be able to attract his attention, to call him. That says that the name is mentioned. In other words, the name is an external, a superficial thing in relation to the person himself. Which is why a name does not give you any information about the personality of the actual person. And the proof is that you find various people that carry the same name, and their personalities and who they are is very, very different from one extreme to another. Weil der Shem spiegelt nicht ab dem Mahus von Baal Hashem, because the name does not reflect the essence of the person. Nicht wie das ist in dem Inyan von Eur, was spiegelt ab dem Moer, und von Metzias zu Eur kommen haben Asage in dem Moer. Unlike the relation between light and the source of light, where over there, number one, the light reflects the source of the light, and therefore, from the light, you could gather information about the source of the light. If it's sunlight, you could look at the light and you could learn about the sun. If it's a different kind of light, you could learn from that light about where it came from, because the light actually reflects the source, its source. But the name and the person, the name doesn't reflect the essence of the person, and therefore from the name you don't know anything about the person. Von der zweite Seite aber, however, if it, from the opposite, from the other perspective, is Yodua, as the Namen von der Menschen that Adam. It's known that a person's name is connected to his essence. As it transcends the expressions of the individual. Und the proof for this, first of all, B'shas merufta mentioned by Zainomen, gite sich avent und aker b'chol atzmusoi. When you call a person by his name, he turns around with his entire being. Und nochmer, more than that, when a person is in a state of a faint, but das meint, dass der Chayes a Nefesh is in a matze von his almus und is abgetragen von Gili Beguf, which a faint means that the life force, the vitality that is going to the soul, from the soul, is concealed and is not revealed, is not being carried down into the actual guf. So how do you awaken this person? By calling him by his name. But das is abavais as the Shem hat a kesher or rirton in etzem chayes nefesh, which this implies that that the name actually reaches the core, the source of the chayes. The chayes is disconnected somewhat is from the guf, and by calling the name, you draw out the chayes that's concealed. Which is why it has the power to bring the chayes back into the guf. So on the one hand, we find that a name is very superficial. It doesn't tell you anything about the person. And then at the same time, the name is connected to the core of the person, and sometimes that's what's needed to reawaken the core of the individual. And before the Rebbe compared a shame to oir and said that the oir, the shame does not reflect the person as oir reflects the moir. So to use the same example, the same idea, and on this perspective, there's an advantage to shame, to the name, over oir. Even though we said before that oir, the light, tells us something about the source of the light, but once the light leaves the source, it has no power to connect back to the source, to draw down the source. The left the source, so to speak, but the name continues to be connected to the person, and by calling the name, you're calling the etzem of the person, the essence of the person. Das heißt, so in other words, if we were to take this paradox of names and rephrase it, als der etzem von dem Adam drückt sich aus, dafke dort, wo setzt sich nicht kein Gilui die Gescheiche zum Menschen. That the essence of the person, where does it express itself specifically in that space where you don't see a revealed connection? In the name that doesn't have a revealed connection to the person, that is where the etzem actually comes out into the open. This is so similar to what we said before about the time, the avodah during the time of Galus, as that etzem von Aiden wird nisgale dafke in the Melem v'Esther von Zman Galus, that the essence of the Yid, the core of the Yid, is revealed specifically in the time of Galus when the revelation is not there. So this answers the question: what is the connection between the word Shemos and the idea of Galus? The word Shemos, the name, represents this paradox of the fact that the revelation of the etzem comes out specifically in a place of concealment, similar to a name that the name has the power, specifically the name which is removed from the essence, has the power from the person, has the power to connect to the essence of the person. And now let's connect this to the Alter Rebbe and Ma'asav Terase v'Avodase, the life's accomplishments of the Alter Rebbe. People now let's move in the kesher zwischen Ma'asav Terase v'Avodase von Bala Ilulim mit the Parsha Shemos to the Inyan von Galus. And this will explain to us the connection between that which the Alter Rebbe accomplished and did and studied and taught, and the idea of Shemos, which is Galus. Says Yadu as Kashem is da the beginnes yichide in nefesh Adam, as they say for beginnes yichide in teire sachsidus. Just like there's a yichida in the person, there's the revealed expressions of the individual, which is usually through seichel and midas, and then there's the yichida, the core, the essence of the individual, which is revealed in certain times, specifically times of difficulty. Similarly, in Torah there's a yichida. And the Yechida of Torah is primarily Teres Achsidis, und der Iker Gilui von Beginnes Yechida von Torah is in Chassidus Chabad. And the primary revelation of the Yechida of Torah is in Chassidus Chabad. The Bala Ilula had Megala given a Raget Raget Teres Achsidis in Avona V'Asage, bechdei durch dem to kennen peil sein eich af en nefesh mamas en chelke ba'elam. The Alter Rebbe, what was his life's accomplishments? To reveal and to draw down the teachings of Chassidus into human comprehension, so that way it can have an impact on the person's nefesh abamis, on the person himself, and on his space in this world. Bis zu mahapich sein zeir metzias ben hakatza al hakatza, to the point to be able to transform their existence from one extreme to another extreme, which is from being a material and physical to being spiritual and godly. This in this avodah, in the avodah of Chassidus Chabad, which is drawing down these lofty ideas into this world, that is where you see, that is where it is expressed, the essence of Torah. In Order 39, the Rebbe brings out the idea that the lower something can go, the higher it originally comes from. And since the idea of Chassidus was to bring down these topics in the lowest of all of the worlds and into the lowest part of the person, therefore it must come from the highest place of Torah, which is the Etzem Pnimis HaTorah. Das heißt, Keshem wie es hat sich früher gerät by Menschen, as these gallows von Yechida Etzem and Neshama is davke when the keiches agluim zayin in the matzah von Helen v'Hester. Just like we said with regards to a person, that the revelation of his Yechida, of the core of his soul, is specifically when the external keiches are in a state of concealment, as they is benegeh b'chinas Yechida in Torah. Similarly, with regards to the Yechida of Torah, as he vert nisgale davke dan, when sie darf uftan in die madreges tachtenes von nefesh mamas v'chelke ba'elam. When is the Yechida of Torah revealed? When it's needed in the lowest elements of the world, of the Nefesh Abamis and of the world. With the Piskum from Bala Ilula, as the Alter Rebbe had said, Kol in Achsidis, Lishana is Tivius Midas, of the whole idea of Chassidus is to change the nature of the Midas. The nature of the Midas is the most primal, physical expression of the individual, and the idea of Chassidus is to go all the way down to Tivius Midaisav, to the nature of his midas, and to transform them and make them more holy and more godly. So the idea of what the Alter Rebbe accomplished, as the Rebbe is going to say in a moment, is so similar to the idea of Galus and to the idea of a name, that you go to the space where there is the greatest concealment, and you reveal the etzem, the essence, the highest levels. Und das ist die Nekude Teves, von Maisa v'Tirase v'Avidase, from Bala Hilula, Umaylos Avedi in Zman HaGolus, and this is the common denominator between the accomplishments of the Alter Rebbe and the idea of the Aveda of Golus. In beide tutzich ufti is Galus from Chidus Yechida. In both, there is the revelation of the level of Yechida, Dafki in them hard versus Mushal from Gilui, specifically in the place where there is a vacuum, where there is a lack of revelation. So this answers the question: what is the connection between the Istalkus of the Alter Rebbe and the Aveda of the Alter Rebbe with Parshas Shemos? Because Shemos is the idea of Galus. Galus is the idea of bringing out the essence, the highest level of the neshama, because there is it is a time and a place of concealment. And similarly, that's what the Alter Rebbe was accomplishing, to go to the places to tachten shein tachten lamate menu, and be megala the yechida of Torah, the etzem pnimiyus HaTorah. In Sivches, the Rebbe is going to say that this is expressed, this idea is seen in the name of the Alter Rebbe, Shneir Zalman. Says Yodua the Darge and Aveda from Balei Lulas Menumis and Dynamic Shneir Zalman. Shneir is Milosh Shneir. Shneir comes from the expression two lights. And Zalman is Osius Lizman. The name Zalman has the same letters as Lizman, to time. Beide nehmen zusammen, which the Rebbe is going to explain in a moment. Beide nehmen zusammen dricken aus dem Chibur von Shneir mit Zman. And the two names together express the connection between Shneir and Zman. The beer in them. Shneir meint, wie der Baal Shem Tov hat gesagt, wegen dem alten Rebben, als wird beleuchten die Welt mit die zwei Lichtigkeiten, der Licht von Teres HaNiglo und Licht von Teres HaChassidus. The two lights is that are alluded to in the name Shneir is, as the Alter Rebbe said, as the Baal Shem Tov said about the Alter Rebbe, that he's going to illuminate the world with two lights, the light of the revealed part of Torah and the light of the hidden part of Torah, the esoteric. Und der Aufruf von Shneir in ein Wort is, and when you bring Shneir, the two lights, into one word, one name, as beim alten Rebbe is going to Shleimus dicker Chibur von Niglu und Nister bis es eine geworden lachadim mamish. But the Alter Rebbe, there was a complete and total fusion of Nigla and Nister until it became one thing. Shneir became one name. Not like that where you would have two different approaches to Torah, one Nigla and one Nister. By the Alter Rebbe, it became one thing. Was der Koyach of them is gekommen der Fall, mamshich megalig when the etzem husa Torah yechidish b'Torah, and the power to fuse these two together came from the fact that the Alter Rebbe drew down and revealed the core, the essence of Torah, which is higher than being concealed or being revealed. When the Pharaoh we learned this in the Yutis Kislev Sich and Chelek Tesvav, that when you go to the highest level of Torah, it's beyond it's beyond the subdivisions of Nigla or Nister. On that level, it's all one Torah. So the Alter Rebbe reached that highest essence of Torah, and therefore Nigla and Nister became one thing. So we see. And from the name Shnei Ur, we see the fact that the Alter Rebbe was Megala, the Yechidish B'Torah, the Etzem Mehus HaTorah, und das hat Mamshech gewen Lizman. This he brought down into time. Was ist verbunden mit Olam, Euch Lashon Helem. When you speak about the world, about creation, creation is made up of time and space. So Zman is a construct of Olam. So the Alter Rebbe brought down this lofty level of Torah into this world, which Olam also comes from the word Helem, from concealment. Das heißt, euch in der niedrige Welt, that even in this lowest world, so leicht and Shnei der Chibur von beide Eides, this combined, this fusion of the two lights should shine, should illuminate. Und demol davke kommt der Gilui von Beginnes Echidische Beteire, wie gerät früher, as der Gilui Beginnes Echidis davke mit Madrega Chitachtena, in a north, it can cleat so Giluyim, and davke in Zman, in Olam, is where you can have the ultimate revelation of the Yechida of Torah, as we explained at length, that the lower you go, the greater the revelation is, the greater the possibility of the revelation, and the greater the revelation is. So Shnei Ur, Zalman, Lashon Lisman represents the revelation of the highest levels of Torah into the lowest levels of the world. So not only do we have this represented in the place of the Histalkus of the Alter Rebbe, that it was in a place of Galus, which connects to the idea of Galus in Parshas Shemos, which shows us that the loftiest levels are revealed and are expressed in the darkest of places. But we see this in the Alter Rebbe's name as well. In Siftes, we're going to say that even though that we mentioned earlier that the Tzemach Tzedek didn't even mention the word Va'era, nevertheless, there is a connection between the Histalkus of the Alter Rebbe and Parshas Va'era, which is when it actually took place. And in other places in Likutei Sichos, the Rebbe actually focuses at length at the connection between the Alter Rebbe's Histalkus and Parshas Va'era. But here we're going to get a glimpse of that as it connects to the ideas spoken here until now. The Gerät viel Mal ist der Tachas HaKavana als echt in Janusz an meinem Mishtasos und von Keches Adam soll kommen begalui und in Aprimius echt in Keches von Menschen. Nicht nur in der Helm, die Knefen wie in Zman HaGalus. Despite the fact that we said that in the time of Galus, where there is a concealment, this is where there is a revelation of the etzem of the person, of the neshama, the etzem of Torah. Nevertheless, the ultimate goal is that there should be able to be this level of revelation even in a time where there's not a concealment, even in a time of revelation. Warum? Despite the fact that there is an advantage to the Aved of Galus, because that's when the Nechida is awakened and revealed, is the Chaber the Tachas from Galus, but the ultimate goal is of the whole Galus, the Geula, was kommt nach dem und durch dem. The Geula that comes after the Galus and through the Aved in the Galus. Das heißt, dass der Gilui Beginnes Echide von Zman HaGalus soll mehr sein in die Keches Pnimien von Menschen, als sehe sollen sein Durchgelung von Etzem Nefesh. That even a time of revelation, which in the context of the person, even when the Keches HaGluyim are functioning, even when the Seichel and the Midas of the person are functioning, that they too should be imbued and permeated with the power of Etzem Nefesh. In other words, usually, till now we said there's a choice. Either you have the gili either you have the operation of Seichel and Midas, or you have the gili of Etzem Nefesh. So the ultimate goal is to be able to have both, to have side the highest of gilui, and side that it should be expressed through the Seichel and the Midas. And you could add that this possibly could be said is the accomplishment of the teachings of Chassidus Chabad as etzem pnimis hateidah versus hecher for the shtalslos from tam v'das, that the deepest, most the loftiest parts of the essence of the Torah, which is higher than the makeup of this world, and is higher than being internalized through tam vadas, through understanding. And mostly, seemingly, can only be taken through Kabbalah by being passed down from generation to generation, and on the level of emunah, a level of faith which transcends understanding and internalization. In Chabad shebenefesh Adam. The idea of Chassidus Chabad is to take these topics, these ideas that generally are beyond the person's understanding, and to bring them down in a revealed way, in the comprehension, in the intellectual processes of the individual. And this should have an impact on his midas, on his expressions, as on the Seder, that he should be able to be awakened, he should be able to be inspired with Ava V'yira, which means to say that the Seichel and midas of the person should function according to the levels of the Etzem HaNefesh, that's higher, the higher levels. Und das ist merumes in dem, was die Istalkus is Gemitzoi Shabbos Kedesh early in Aleph, the Parshas Ve'era. And this is hinted to, this is alluded to in the fact that the Alter Rebbe's Istalkus took place on Mitzvah Shabbos, which was the eve of Sunday, the Sunday of Ve'era. Aber Ve'era steht nicht begiloi, but Ve'era is not yet said out in the Tzemach Tzedek's letter in a revealed way. The lashon of the letter is Mesoi Shabbos Kodesh Shemos Chav Gimel Chav Dalid, but it doesn't say that the next day was the Sunday of Ve'era. Ve'era is where we speak about the revelation of Ani Avaya. The essence, the core of the Eibishter's light, which until this time, until the time of Parshas Ve'era, had not yet been revealed to the world. Rashi says that the Avos, the forefathers, were not able to recognize. I didn't reveal myself to them with my truest, most level, namely Ani Havaya. Ve'era means I revealed myself. Again, comes from the idea of seeing, of vision, and of revelation. So, das heißt, as the Bechino Madrege was Hecher von Ishtauslos, is a Rabbi Kumula Dei'iyah V'Gili Beifim Pnimi. Ve'era represents the idea of Geula, where the levels that are higher than Ishtauslos, that are generally concealed, are able to come down in an internal way to be seen and to be revealed. So that's what Ve'era represents. So the Istalkus of the Alter Rebbe, despite the fact that it took place in Parshas Shemos, because Ma'asav Teirasei V'Avidasei really represents the idea of bringing down the loftiest light into the darkest of places. But ultimately, the goal is that this loftiest of light should be able to be revealed, even not in a total concealment, even in a place that can be processed by the person's seichel and midas, and therefore the Alter Rebbe's Istalkus also is connected to Ve'era, which is the idea that although it's not yet begilui, but ultimately it will be begilui, it will be in a revealed way, which is the goal of the revelation of Teres HaChassidus. So the Alter Rebbe's Istalkus was sort of between Shemos and Ve'era, as Chassidus is the final, the Chassidus Chabad is the final step between Galus and the bridge to the Geula.